Welcome to A View to a Grill. I'm Johnny. Today we're going to smoke some beef ribs on the Golden's cast iron Kamado. We'll start off with some day before rib prep. These beef ribs are not the dino beef ribs. These are beef plate ribs. These are delicious and they have a lot more meat on it than you would expect. If you ever get a chance to buy some beef plate ribs, grab them. Now I have a 4-bone rack of ribs. To prepare these, all I'm going to do is take off the fat cap. Under the fat cap is silver skin, and your seasoning will have a hard time penetrating that. If you have a sharp knife, you can remove the fat cap in strips, just like this. Now in this shot, I have the fat cap removed except for some little patches of fat, and that's where the meat gets really thin. So I'm just gonna leave that there. On the bone side of the ribs, I'm also going to leave the membrane alone so that it can help hold these beef ribs together during the cook. Now I'll get the beef ribs seasoned. You wanna do the sides as well as the top. Now my rule of thumb is to put enough seasoning on them to cover the whole rack of ribs, but not so much that you can't still see through the seasoning to the meat. I'll get the beef ribs into the refrigerator uncovered until tomorrow morning. The next morning I'll remove the beef ribs from the refrigerator and set them on the counter. And now it's time to set up the Golden's cast iron Kamado. The first thing I'll do is remove the divider plate because we're not going to use that in today's cook. Next, I'll clean up some of the leftover lump charcoal that we had from the previous cook. Once I have all of that cleaned up, I'll add a couple of large chunks of lump as well as some wood chunks. Once I have that set up, I'll then fill up the Golden's cast iron Kamado about 3/4 of the way. Now I don't expect this cook to last more than 10 or 12 hours, and 3/4 of a full Golden's cast iron Kamado gets me about 10 to 12 hours worth of burn time. Now I also know through experience that it's going to take about 3/4 of a chimney starter to get this up to my target temperature of 275 degrees. And then once it's ashed over, I'll pour it right into the middle of our bed of charcoal that we set up earlier. Once I have that done, I'll throw in the sear plate, and then on top of that, I'm gonna put our first tier of grill grates. Next, I'll add another tier of grill grates and just put one side on, and then I'll slide my drip pan right under that. Now I'll put the other grill grate on and then set up my ThermalWorks Signals ambient temperature thermometer so I can monitor the ambient temperature of the pit. Now it's time to bring the Golden's cast iron Kamado up to temp. I'll start off with the top vent open and the bottom vent open as well. When we get up to 220 degrees, it's going to be time for our first vent adjustment. I'm just going to close the bottom vent by half, and I'm going to leave the top vent right where it is. At 240 degrees, it's time to make another vent adjustment. I'll close the bottom vent by half again and leave the top vent right where it is. At 250 degrees, I'll close the bottom vent by half again and leave the top vent right where it is. And then at 260 degrees, I'll close the top vent by half. And this time we're going to leave the bottom vent right where it is. Now at 270 degrees, I'm going to make a judgment call. Normally, I would close the top vent by half again, but today I'm not feeling it. I'm kind of thinking that the temperature for today is going to settle right about where the top vent is, but I will close the bottom screen all the way and the bottom vent by half again. Sometimes you just got to feel where the heat is going and adjust. This is also a good time to set up your internal temperature probe. And now we're at 275 degrees, which is our target temperature. And I'm going to go ahead and put the ribs on. I'll put the ribs in and close the lid. And now I'm just going to monitor the temperature just to make sure it comes back up to temp. Now at 9:23, I noticed that we were pretty much stuck in the 160 degree range. So I decided to open the bottom vent just a little bit. And then at 10 o'clock, we're up to 281, which is only 6 degrees higher than our target temperature. Now here is a good example as to why you need an ambient temperature probe. If you look at the Tell True thermometer, it's accurate for where it is. If you look at the grate level thermometer, well, it's accurate for where it is also. If you went by the dome thermometer, you would think that you're smoking this at about 235 degrees, but when in actuality it's really 280 degrees, which is a 45 degree difference. Where's my mathematician? And then at 11 o'clock we'll check on it again, and notice how far our internal temperature went up, all the way to 159 degrees. It's pretty quick. I'll get the lid open and spritz our ribs again. And then an hour later, 11:59, we'll check on it again, and our internal temperature is now at 166 degrees, and it's time to get these ribs wrapped. Now I'll just get my wrapping station set. I'll spritz the paper just so it can be more pliable and add moisture, and get the ribs wrapped. Once I'm done wrapping the ribs, I'll place them back onto the GCI and then get my internal thermometer and plug it back in. I'll then spritz the outside of the paper again and get the lid closed and let these cook for another hour. Then notice here, we're at 165 degrees internal temperature. That's about to change and things are going to get a bit odd. Now, I don't always use my app when I'm barbecuing, because a lot of times I'm just outside anyway doing things, and I just walk over to the pit and check the thermometer just as it sits on the table. Today when I did that, I noticed that the internal temperature dropped all the way to 153 degrees. It's a 12 degree drop. I've never seen it drop that far in the stall before, but it happened. Normally 5 degree drop maybe, and that would be extreme, right? A 12 degree drop I've never seen, but it happened today. But I'm not going to take the ribs out and unwrap them. I'm just going to go with what I have, and then once an hour for the next 5 hours, I spritz the paper just like I would normally do. And then finally at 7:42, the ribs have hit 200 degrees of internal temperature, and now I'm going to probe for tenderness. I use my Thermopin 1 for that, and that pin is just sliding in and out of that meat with no resistance. This rack of ribs is done. Now I like to vent my ribs while they're resting, so I'll just use my scissors, cut some of that paper away, and just let them sit right on the counter until they reach an internal temperature of 165 degrees. Now just take a look at these ribs. I think they're beautiful, and this is under the horrible lighting in my kitchen because it's dark outside. So now let's get these cut open. The knife is going through like butter. As you can see in this cross section, it is looking really good. Has a nice smoke ring. The meat is glistening. Now let's take a taste test. One of the questions I get asked is, why don't I film longer taste tests? Well, here's why. Look at this. This is my taste test. Look at my tongue. It's just like stuck out there, hanging out of my mouth. And it's like, let me at that beef rib. I just don't like the way that looks. It's not a good look, right? It's not a good look. But let's finish it. Took a bite out. The beef ribs are delicious, moist. The seasoning is just the way I like it. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, take a little time and do that now. Thank you for watching A View to a Grill. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.